Flagstone Dragontree, it's a Cape blend, what we call a Cape blend, which means that we have blended a variety called Pinotage into it. Pinotage being a South African grape variety crossed in 1925 from two varieties, one Pinot Noir, which is where the Pinot in Pinotage comes from, and another variety which we now call Sanso, but then was called Hermitage, hence the Tage of Pinotage. So that's where the name comes from. It was crossed by a guy called Professor Isaac Ibrahim Perold, who was the first head of the Department of Winemaking at the University of Stellenbosch. And it really is the South African signature variety in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of some pretty tough rustic Pinotage out there, but just like Pinot Noir, just because some of it isn't very good doesn't mean that the really great examples shouldn't be kind of heralded for what they are, which is world-class, very exciting wine. So we've taken the Pinotage and we blended with the Cabernet and Shiraz. It's a formula which really came a little bit by surprise. We were doing a lot of experimentation. We were really after a certain kind of tannin structure. There was a wonderful moment I had when I was traveling around France in the early 1990s with my wife, and I saw this beautiful little village up on the slope of a hill, and I said, yeah, I've recognized that from somewhere. And we drove up, and as we got further and further to the village, the vineyards became older and the soil became rockier and rockier, and I just couldn't believe how wonderful the vineyards looked, and I was getting really excited. And we drove into the center of the village, and the only thing I wanted to do was just to taste the wines from the area, and there was a little shop, and we went in there and we started tasting, and I couldn't believe the tannin, the quality of the tannin in the wine. That got me really excited. So I was determined to come back and to South Africa and do something like that. And we discovered that by combining Pinotage with Shiraz, obviously being a Rhone variety, but then also a little bit of Cabernet in South Africa for structure. Although we don't get necessarily the same flavors and aromas as we would in the Rhone, which we're not looking for, we're looking for South African characters. There's this amazing tannin which pervades the wine and is consistent from year to year. And that's where we came up with this formula, which we've been doing since, this is now our 13th vintage, the 2008. I suppose it's the wine that we would describe as the cult wine in the Flagstone range. It's definitely the wine that all the winemakers drink more of. And I love it because it's an incredibly versatile wine in terms of what it can pair with. You can drink it with sushi, you can drink it with hot curries, you can drink it with anything, you can drink it on its own. It's a really good sundowner wine, watching the sunset sort of wine, slightly chilled. It's a wine that's very close to my heart. I absolutely love it. So we're going to have a quick taste of it. So it's got a wonderful color, lovely dark red ruby color, which always gets you a bit excited. And I think the thing about Dragontree is that it's got this wonderful, intense plum, slight coffee chocolate character, but plum is what really strikes you on the nose. And then there's a lot of kind of really interesting characteristics like cinnamon and a little touch of fennel, which you get from the Cabernet. And then little high notes of delicious things like strawberry and cherry, which really makes it wonderfully beguiling, and you just want to taste it. Okay, so welcome to the Flagstone Barrel Maturation Cellar. This, in fact, was an old power station. We've converted it. We've put in a floor and fixed it up and cooling. We're right next to the sea. The sea is only about 350 meters away from us. So it's really nice and moist, and it's a perfect environment in which to age wine. Okay, we're just going to go and try and find some Dragontree. I'm sorry that your world is so upside down. And in the ceiling, it's actually it's all Oregon redwood from America, and big thick planks, which was what was used for the insulation. Unlike many of our other wines, but particularly our single varietal wines, we actually take out a barrel a little earlier. Dragontree, because of the specific tannin we're looking for, we actually leave in the barrels for 2 years. So we're getting to that stage now where the wines have really developed into, particularly the tannins have developed into this really subtle, soft flavor and mouthfeel, and that's why we've come today just to taste through, take some samples of the ones. We've already pre-chosen these in the laboratory, but I just wanted to check on one or two here today. What we've got here is Shiraz. It's from a farm called Wildepaardekloof, which is way up in the mountains above Ashton, the most beautiful farm, almost 500 meters above sea level, with some amazing southeasterly and southwesterly slopes. And this is where we get the majority of the fruit from for our Dragontree blend. So we're driving up into the mountains. This is Wildepaardekloof means Wilde means wild, Paardekloof is Wild Horse Valley, and it's really spectacular mountainside, spectacular country, and because of the altitude above sea level, and because it's southeast and southwest facing slopes, although it's fairly dry up here, it's nice and cool. Okay, so this is the Shiraz that goes into Dragontree. Just finished picking. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning. Started nice and early at first light. The quality is superb. It's just a little bit of shrivel in the grapes, but generally the quality is fantastic. And the picking team, you'll see there on the bucky, they're very experienced, and so you get you don't get a lot of leaves in the plukkister. So this is you can see on the floor the amount of rock and decomposed granitic soil that there is. There's all sorts of interesting stones like this is feldspar and this rich quartzite rock. So it's quite an amazing soil right here, high up in the mountains, and it gives it just creates an amazing tannin. We found this particular block gives you the perfect sort of tannin we're looking for Dragontree. So this is really our number one Dragontree Shiraz block. This forms the backbone and the spiciness, and really gives the wine a lot of its weight in the palate. Comes particularly the mid palate comes from this block. It's a very important block for us. And this is a very late picked. We pick in various stages on this farm depending on the soil types. This is very late picked Shiraz from Wildepaardekloof. It's looking pretty good. The tannins aren't quite ripe enough at this bottom section. This bottom section does tend to ripen a little bit later because it's on the bottom of the slope, and that's kind of where all the water runs to. So it's got a little bit more vigor in the vine, and as a result ripens a little bit later. So you kind of got to pick by soil type and also obviously by the vigor of the vine. So we'll probably leave this section of the vineyard another couple of days to get it absolutely perfect. We're Tuesday today, so we'll probably pick this next Monday or on Friday at the end of the week. The sugar's ripe. I mean, we're looking at about 25 barreling, which is the equivalent of 14.5% alcohol. So we don't want to let it go much longer than this because we try and keep the Dragontree alcohol below 14%. And we specifically use older wood. This is a French barrel, and the extra amount of time that it stays in the barrel allows the tannins to develop to a level and a consistency which is unusual. And although it takes a long time, it has to rest here for 2 years. This is a 2009. It would have gone into barrel almost 2 years ago to the date, and it's so it ties up a lot of your money. It takes a long time and a lot of love and effort to get it here. But when you have an opportunity to taste, to smell and to taste wines that have got to this stage, you know you're onto a good thing. So there's a wonderful grippiness to it. And there's just such a lot of gorgeous fruit. You really can imagine drinking quite a lot of this. It's actually, I haven't tasted this for a while, and that's why I don't have a lot of words to describe, because it's much better than I thought it would be. And look, 2009 was a stupendously good year, and I think this vintage Dragontree is going to be everything that I hope it will be. And judging by this, which is really an old barrel, this barrel is about 8 years old now, 9 years old. For it to have this kind of concentration in fruit is amazing. Yeah, she's definitely ready to come out. And you know, the nose is an amazing thing. There's the way it works is that you've got a little bit of a in most animals the sense of smell is at the front of the brain. It's a pretty exposed part of the brain. In humans, it's right hidden at the underside of the brain, covered by this bony plate, which is a little bit like armor plating. So it's in a very protected part of the brain, which is interesting because it's one part of the brain where brain cells actually regenerate, and there's been a lot of research done on it. And it's amazing to think that just a little sniff, as you take the aromas right up to the top of the nose, you've got some sort of, well, for want of better description, like raw nerve endings, which catch onto the aroma compounds as they're going past. And then they send an electrical impulse right down to the very bottom of your brain, and you're able to decipher it. And now the interesting thing about the nose is that this part of the nose, the upper part of the nose, actually gets signals from other parts of the brain as well, which is unusual for any of our senses. It doesn't happen to our retina, for example, but other parts of our brain which are involved in things like arousal and concentration actually inform the nose, and in a way it allows that part of our body to discern what it wants to smell in particular instances, and how it reacts and sends the messages to the brain. It's almost as though your nose kind of has a mind of its own. So whenever you are smelling something that is this exciting, for me, it's got these amazingly juicy and fantastic aromas. There are obviously hundreds of aromas getting into your nose, but your nose will determine which ones to pick up. And funnily enough, with this particular wine, it always just, I don't know, it reminds me of very happy times. And that's kind of when we're going through the barrels and trying to taste them. We want a whole combination of aromas. You can't necessarily pick out any specific ones, but the overall feeling is a happy wine. And you always get that with Dragontree. So we give it a nice deep taste and suck in some air through the wine, which again allows those aroma compounds to go back up the retronasal passage and into the top of the nose where we're smelling. And in fact, that's obviously where a lot of the taste comes from, which is why when you've got a cold, you think you can't taste, but it's because you actually can't smell anything. And the palate is just really gorgeous. It's warming, it's soft, it's very comforting palate, and the tannins are there in kind of, not in the background, it's all over the palate, but they're very soft and very generous tannin. And this really what sets this wine apart from everything else in our range, and I think it's what's made the wine a bit of a cult wine amongst our followers and amongst the Flagstonites out there. And primarily we've learned that if we put wines from very, very rocky, stony vineyards that are very well drained, we inevitably get these kind of tannins. And so we've over the last decade or so really focused on specific vineyards for wines that go into Dragontree, and it's a surprising wine, and I think one of the reasons why it's such good value is that because it's treated exactly the same as all the other wines like Dark Horse and Music Room and Writer's Block, all our single varietal super premium wines gets exactly the same treatment. The vineyards are the same sort of quality, but obviously it sells for a little bit less because it's a blend, and I think blends from South Africa maybe suffer from a little bit of an identity crisis. And so I think one of the other reasons why the winemakers always buy this wine, because we can't really always afford the posh stuff. Can we just carry on filming for like a long time? I've just got to cancel some meetings. See you later.